Welcome to Kathy on the Couch, your podcast for everyday clinicians who sit with grief, trauma, and the hardest human experiences every day. You weren't meant to carry this alone, and this is a space for therapists who hold space for others and sometimes need a place to be held too. I am Kathy, and I am your EMDR consultant trainer and thanatologist specializing in methods of death, dying, and bereavement. I created this podcast to support those who do the deep work, especially trauma and grief therapists and EMDR clinicians needing a soft place to land, who want real conversations, meaningful support, and a community where the hard questions are finally welcome. We also are thrilled to share and announce our Kathy on the Couch membership community, which is your home for grief and trauma consultation, professional growth. It's by therapists, for therapists, where you find a monthly consultation group. You'll find a monthly NBCC CE training. You'll get access to a course module and resource kits. We're so happy to have you in one place, and you don't have to go looking for all those items in all the places. You can just come here. So we hold space for those who hold it all. That's our mission, where we talk honestly about all clinical challenges in the business of being a healer through curriculum development and training and breaking the silence to lead and thrive in the field without losing ourselves in the process. So, if you're looking to join for deeper connection, I invite you to join our membership community to help you learn and grow. Or if you're an EMDR therapist looking to be certified or a consultant, we have our program EMDR University. Remember to give us a 5-star rating wherever you get your podcast. Now let's get comfortable and let's head on over to the couch.
I wanted to talk to you about the blog, The Rooted Practice. We went live and we are going to be exploring a lot of awesome things. I'm Kathy Couch, licensed clinical social worker, grief and trauma specialist, and the person behind Rewired 360. We've decided to go with the name, The Rooted Practice, for a felt sense of roots, grounding, and something that can relate to clinicians. So this podcast is a companion to the blog series I'm launching, and that's a place where you find the written frameworks I'm developing to get to breathe a little more, where I can talk through the thinking, share the theory and what it actually looks like in the room, and invite you into the questions that are driving our work. So today I want to do two things. First, tell you what I posted yesterday and why it matters. And the second, map out everything that's coming, the full picture of the series, the sequence, and the rationale behind the order. Because the sequencing is intentional, and I really need you to understand the why. And so yesterday, actually February 26th, I published the first post in the Rooted Practice blog series. And it's a formal introduction to the Developmental Consultation Framework, something I call the DCF. And here's the short version. The DCF is a 3-component model for clinical consultation in trauma and grief practice. This place for consultants and people who receive consultation to have a developmental map, a way of locating where the consultee is in their growth and then intervening precisely there, not above it, not behind it, one step forward. And that's what I've landed on in regards to some of the missing pieces. And so we decided to have 3 components. Number 1, a consultee-led presentation that functions as a real-time developmental assessment. Number 2, the rubric-anchored positioning that locates the consultee within a clear progression of competence. So having you develop these criteria to be able to help them know, aka the rubric, what is expected. And then the scaffolded intervention, it's a Vygotskian, Lev Vygotsky introduced this. And he introduced the concept of scaffolding to target the next developmental level only. And it's grounded in his zone of proximal development, Paulo Freire's problem-posing pedagogy, and Simon Sinek's Golden Circle, Porges' polyvagal framework. So many good things came into this, you guys. It's so exciting to have this together in an established framework. And then also Bernard and Goodyear's discrimination model and founder and Sharafansky's competency-based supervision framework. So lots of good stuff in here. You don't need to know the background. In this series, we're going to be publishing pieces on each of those models so that you can kind of go deeper And if you're in trauma or grief practice, if you consult or supervise or receive consultation, it's written for you. And without a developmental map, even expert consultants risk consolidating what the consultee already knows or pitching the intervention too far above their current understanding to integrate. And the missing ingredient is not expertise, it's structure and relational development. I want to spend real time here because sequencing matters, and I want you to understand why each series follows from the one before it. So there are 3 series running and a set of frameworks in development that will become their own series, but we're going to walk you through all of it. So we're going to be posting these series every Tuesday through April, 7 posts total, and these are the theoretical foundations beneath everything I'm building. We've talked about the Pedagogical Roots, that's already launched, the first post, and then we're going to discuss, why is that different than clinical tradition, but why it matters for trauma therapists and the frame that follows. Then we're going to go to one of my favorites, Paulo Freire, and we're going to look at the banking model critique, the deposit model, where the consultant deposits information in the consultee without a relational assessment or developmental approach. And we're going to look at the idea of servant leadership and problem-posing pedagogy. And this comes first because Paulo Freire and his challenge in the knowledge delivery model is the most applicable to consultation, so we put that first. And so before we build the framework, we had to name what was broken. Then we're going to discuss John Dewey, the experiential learning and reflective practice. Dewey follows Freire because he gives us a practical learning, how it happens through experience and reflection, and this bridge between Freire's relational critique and Lev Vygotsky's developmental architecture, which is scaffolding, which is actually the next post. And we're going to talk about this zone of proximal development. What is the zone where the consultee develops the best? How do we assess? How do we encourage them? But also learning isn't the same developmental level for everyone. And so how do we modify our interaction with the participant that's coming to seek consultation by understanding what they know and then looking at this idea of the developmental engine? This framework is sort of the foundation of the developmental consultation framework, and he comes third because you really need Freire's relational orientation and Dewey's experiential grounding before this zone of proximal development makes full clinical sense. And then we have Montessori, self-directed learning and the prepared environment, and it extends the sequence into the question of what the consultant prepares in advance, the relational structure, and self-directed growth. And then we have bell hooks, engage pedagogy, belonging, and power in the learning space. Really, it's this idea of after the developmental architecture is in place, her contribution is the most relational and most personal. She names what it costs to build genuine learning relationships across various power differentials. And now we're going to look at those structures that we talked about in regards to some of the foundations of established consultation models and competency-based supervision, and we'll discuss those in post 6. Then we have post 7, the functional impairment and gatekeeping. We're going to look at the Wright brothers and analyze Simon Sinek's work, and it's a capstone, kind of putting everything together before in a concrete, memorable illustration of why starting with why produces different results than starting with what. So we have really, a sequence of logic in this Pedagogical Roots series that is so rich, you guys, and it was so fun to put together. And as we're looking at, development and relational honesty, and we also have some forges in there. And the theorists in this series are not lists, they're a sequence, and each one is answering a question that the previous one opened. So we're so happy to be able to talk to you about this. It's been so exciting to be able to build this and be able to introduce this idea and see it come out as a full framework. So we're going to remove from the relational critique And we're going to be building on the theoretical foundation. It's not a sequence, it's a part where each one answers a question the previous one opened. And so we're going to be looking at practice demonstrations. How does this look? We're introduce a framework first because you can't demonstrate a framework you haven't introduced. And then we're going to look at the 3 components. What do they look like when a consultee is presenting in a group complex, the added complexity of multiple developmental levels, how the consultant holds that, and then a consultation between clinicians of similar developmental levels, such as in my peer huddle or any consultation environment, and the relational dynamics and power differentials when the expertise gap narrows, and also beginning to look at the consultee's developmental frontier, their nervous system, not their case conceptualization, right? So this is so important. What's the case conceptualization? What's in their nervous system is a more important question. And, it's more about this relational attunement rather than technical competence. It's about this idea of what does scaffolding look like when someone is technically proficient, but relationally ahead of where their embodied practice can follow. And we're going to be looking at all of these ideas where we're looking at some of these questions that we have maybe in our mind, but not specifically stated. So if you step back from the individual series and look at the whole body of work, there's architecture that we're naming explicitly, and the pedagogical roots comes first because it answers this foundational question. What do we know about how human beings learn and develop? We're missing the nervous system approach, this relational dynamic, and we set the tone for learning. When you have shame, when you have a power differential where the learner is not a co-creator and there's not this aligned experience, we'll get into that. We need that grounding before we can be able to learn. And it's a direct application to its, Vygotsky and Freire. What do they look like when you bring them into the room? And these developmental frameworks that have the depth to be applied with accuracy. And we move from relational and pedagogical grounding through this consultation architecture. And we're being able to look at these pieces together. So the Pedagogical Roots first series is live. This is the first in our Rooted Practice blog. So go ahead and take a look at that foundational post. And then the podcast is going to follow each major post within 1 to 2 weeks. So when something significant publishes, a new framework, a demonstration post, a series launch, we'll record an episode that takes you deeper into the thinking behind that. And the blog is where the formal work lives. And this is where it breathes. So we're going to close the way we started with that question. What does it actually take for a clinician to grow? Here's my answer. A relationship with enough structure to locate where you are, enough trust to move you forward at the right developmental moment, and the nervous system in the room that creates a condition for learning before a clinical word of context is uttered or exchanged. And that's what I'm building in this series. And every framework, every post, every episode, I'm trying to give this field a more precise language for what it already knows how to do intuitively, in a structure that makes it reproducible, teachable, and honest about what's happening. I know I've been there on both sides of the consultation table, in the consultation room, trying to read the verdict before it's named, and on the front of the room, realizing I had a lot to offer, but not enough framework to know what to say or how to deliver. And this framework came from both of those places. Thank you so much for joining us on another episode of Kathy on the Couch, the podcast for everyday clinicians. We hope today's conversation has inspired you, sparked new ideas, and offered you practical tools you can bring into your own practice, whether you're just starting out in the mental health field or you are a seasoned clinician. We're grateful to have you as part of our growing community, and Rewired 360 is here to companion you along your clinical career path. From the moment you begin your professional journey, we offer comprehensive support and resources that guide you at every stage. So, our curriculum is designed to fill the gaps often found in the marketplace, providing advanced training, consultation, and mentorship as you progress in your journey. Visit us at the Kathy on the Couch community, the trauma community for clinicians, or the EMDR University community for EMDR clinicians. Be sure to check out our show notes for a full list of resources, and don't forget to visit our swag store at rewired360.shop. And this information shared on this podcast reflects perspectives and experiences of our guest hosts. It's not intended to substitute for professional consultation, supervision, or individual guidance. If you have questions about how to apply any of the concepts, we encourage you to consult with your clinical supervisor, consultant, or licensing board. As always, follow those research-based protocols and best practices in your work. We're here to walk alongside you as you deepen your clinical understanding. And until next time, keep connecting, keep learning, and keep rewiring for success. Take care. This is Kathy on the couch, and on behalf of our entire team, thank you for being with us on the couch, and we'll see you again.